So I was on a cross-country flight, going out to meet up with some colleagues, and we were working on simplifying the set of requirements that we place on all of our cloud offerings, anything that's going to be deployed out into the cloud. We always want to make those as simple as possible and as attainable as possible. And on the flight, there was a movie available on board that I hadn't seen before. And as I'm watching it, I'm seeing a lot of the things that we need to understand in information security just played out there on the screen. And that movie was The Founder with Michael Keaton. So it tells the story of Ray Kroc and the McDonald brothers back in the 1940s when they were putting together this franchise system that we know well and really created the fast food industry as we know it today. You might be thinking, what the heck does this have to do with information security? But bear with me, I'll share a couple of lessons that I think we can all take away from that. So it all starts back in 1940. Actually, a little bit before that. The McDonald brothers had moved out to California basically to find jobs, and they found it in a small barbecue restaurant. Not a lot of people know that the McDonald's company started with a pit barbecue restaurant in Southern California. And they had some success there, but it was a small community. So they really wanted to expand and really amp up the way their business was running. And that's really our first lesson. And that's, you got to go where the customers are. And that's exactly what they did. The McDonald brothers moved their restaurant 40 miles away to San Bernardino, California. It was a much denser population. There was a lot more customers. And that's something we often forget in information security. We tend to sit in our cubes or in our offices and deliver edicts, deliver requirements, or give thumbs up, thumbs down on architectures, or work with vendors trying to buy the latest bit of software that's going to solve our problems. But we got to get out there. We got to get out amongst the people that are actually implementing these things. The developers that are building the software or the IT personnel that are implementing these things, you got to get shoulder to shoulder with them. You got to get your hands a little dirty. And that's exactly what the McDonald brothers did. It was kind of interesting how they did it too. They decided it was going to be cheapest to move the entire restaurant from this small town out to San Bernardino. But there was a problem. They couldn't just put it on the back of a truck and move it out there. There was an overpass in the way, and the building was too tall. So ever the problem solvers, they literally cut the ceiling of the restaurant off and set it on another truck. And by 1940, they were all set up, and they were running this drive-in. It was all the rage in Southern California at the time. But soon a problem developed, and that brings us to our next lesson. So back then, the menu at McDonald's looks a lot different than it does now. Maybe it's actually more kind of back into this, but we'll stick to the classic McDonald's menu. It had 19 items on it. Barbecue was, of course, one of them. You could get chili, you could get all sorts of things that you couldn't get after that. And Maurice McDonald, one of the McDonald brothers, was fanatical about measuring things. And that's really our next lesson, is you got to measure everything. You can't improve it unless you measure it. So he looked at their menu and he looked at their sales and he said, 87% of our sales are coming from just 3 items. And those items were, and this shouldn't come as much surprise, hamburgers, soft drinks, and French fries. So why not focus on those things? And that's exactly what they did. They rebuilt their menu to this. This is what it looks like after that refurbishing of the menu. But they didn't stop there. They continued the improvements. And we'll get to that in a minute, but this is our next lesson, and that's simplification. Things always work better when they're simple, but this is probably the most important lesson that we can learn as information security providers, professionals, whatever we want to call ourselves. We can't secure it all. And if anybody ever comes to you and asks the question, is this piece of software secure? Is this process secure? Is this cloud secure? Don't answer it. It's the wrong question. You're never going to give the right answer. We can't guarantee that anything is going to be secure, and we ought to know that. So don't try to focus on it all. You can't do it all. Focus on the really important things. And there's a couple of things within information security, a couple of helpers out there that we can use. On the application security side, there's always the OWASP Top 10. And I hope you're familiar with it. And if you're not, please go out there and take a look at it. It's on owasp.org. But the thing about the OWASP Top 10 that's the biggest takeaway is that it doesn't change all that much. These are the problems that we see over and over again in application security. and they don't change. That's a big takeaway for us. These are the things that we need to focus on. So if you're looking at a place to focus in application security, absolutely the OWASP top 10. And all the vendor products we use should be addressing these. Out on the cloud side, though, the Cloud Security Alliance produces a matrix. And this is a great way to figure out what you need to focus on, whether you're building a product to be pushed out into the cloud, you're moving your IT services into an XaaS type solution in the cloud. These are the kind of things that you need to go over with your vendor. The next lesson. Now we go back to our McDonald brothers, and they're going to take that small menu and they're going to do something really special with it. They create what's called the Speedy system. Just last week I was working with my colleagues, and we were going through a process that we use to certify any of those products that go out into the cloud. And we went through a tabletop exercise. We don't do that enough in information security. We ask for our software to be developed and tested. We ask for the vendors that we buy things from to test their software, but we never test our processes, or we don't do it enough. Take the time to sit down and tabletop things. Assign roles around the table. Somebody's got to play the customer, somebody's got to play the implementer, somebody's got to play an owner. That's exactly what the McDonald brothers did. They took all of their employees out to a tennis court, and with nothing more than some chalk and a stepladder and a yardstick, they laid out the kitchen in scale, and then they ran simulations over and over and over again. Do that with your processes, because this is the absolute best time to find problems, because it's the cheapest time. When the McDonald brothers found that something wasn't working, somebody was bumping into each other, something was being prepared at the wrong time, and there was ways to improve the efficiency. Simply erase it, redraw it with chalk. We can do the same thing with our processes. You keep doing it until you get it right. And then the other thing to remember here, and this is our last lesson with tabletopping, is you got to have somebody kind of running the show, orchestrating things, capturing all these lessons that you're learning as you're going through them. Somebody's got to be in charge of that. And here we see Nick Offerman playing Maurice Mac McDonald, finally getting it right. Only then did they shut the restaurant down for 2 weeks, obtain a $5,000 loan, and create the McDonald's that we know today. So they've got a restaurant that's got lines around the corner. It's running great. They catch the eye of Ray Kroc. Ray Kroc was a mixer salesman, and he noticed that there was this little restaurant in San Bernardino that was buying tons of his product, and he couldn't figure out why. So he went out there to see. He immediately said, I got to franchise this. And that's exactly what he did. This is where we get into engagement. We often forget about engagement in information security, and it's very, very important as well. And I'll start with the negative lesson, and that's the price of disengagement is cleanup, and you're going to have to do the cleanup yourself. And that's what happened with McDonald's, specifically with Ray Kroc. He sold these franchises to his golfing buddies who really didn't care about restaurants. So they went in and started changing things around. That nice, clean 8-item menu certainly started growing because they started monkeying with the process. They were selling fried chicken, they were selling biscuits, they were selling everything but what the original menu was. And their businesses were starting to decline. You got to keep those experts involved. The people that we work with, they're not information security experts. You are. You're the ones that have to stay involved there. But the best way for long-term success is to turn those people into information security experts. And we saw that in the film with examples of the best kind of franchisees. Husband and wife teams that took on that franchise. Husband's in the back, working the grill, orchestrating all of the kitchen items, and out front, his wife is working with the customers, making sure everybody's happy. They became experts in that business over time. And information security just doesn't scale to the point where we can build our Infosec teams up to cover everything. We've got to build some knowledge within the teams. And it's really difficult because they're not judged on how secure their systems are or how secure the software that they deliver is. That's what we're judged on. So we've got to pass a little bit of that on. It's a give and take. So at this point, we've got a well-running restaurant. We've got a number of people that are now experts, and we're really highly engaged. What comes next? We depart from the movie a little bit here and move to McDonald's internationally. If you've ever gone to India and done business there, gone into a McDonald's, you see that you can buy something kind of different. The menus around the world are different. Things are different once you globalize. You go to Russia, you might be buying your burger on a flatbread. And one of my favorite things is if you go many places in Europe, you can get a beer with your Big Mac. Very different than the United States. We've got to be prepared for these things. And the best InfoSec example of that is GDPR, is being able to, having the requirement on you to not only secure the data, particularly private data, but specifically for countries, for the people that live in those countries. There's this concept of localization. If you're working in Europe or Russia or India, and the Indian proposal has just been out in the past couple of weeks, you have to localize that data. It can't leave Indian soil, Russian soil, European soil, so on and so forth. And so many people have lost opportunities, particularly with GDPR in Europe. They've had to block access to Europeans, to their business, because they didn't get it secured in time. So don't let that happen to you. Finally, well, not quite finally, though, the next to the last point I want to make is this stuff isn't going to happen to itself. You've got to get out there and sell this. And we saw that in the film. Michael Keaton, playing Ray Kroc, would go to any tent raising he could find, any group of people, and he was trying to find franchisees. But there's something to learn there. We got to, again, get out of our comfort zone, get out of our offices, get out of our cubes, and go out there to where things are being developed. Work with them directly. You got to sell this. And if you think about how the McDonald's restaurant has changed over the years, especially those early franchises, the original one that the McDonald brothers built was great. But it didn't have a whole lot of glitz. That's something that Ray Kroc really added to the mixture, was the concept of the golden arches, the concept of all that neon. Sometimes we have to put a little bit of glitz on our processes and our procedures, so don't forget that. Finally, I will leave you with this. Don't forget to celebrate your successes. It's easy to get down as you're fighting that uphill battle of keeping things secure, so don't forget that.